Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is the next video in the design experiences with UiPath. In this series, we are looking at the differences between the classic versus the modern experiences, and primarily we are focusing on how exactly can I use the modern design experiences. And the topic for today is the target methods configuration. Today we are going to see what exactly are the different configuration methods which are available for different target methods which are provided by the modern folders. In case you are coming to the channel for the first time and you haven't already subscribed, please consider subscribing to the channel to get the next videos in the same playlist. Having said that, let's see the agenda for today. Talking of the agenda, first of all, we are going to see how actually the modern activities work. This would be a quick recap of what actually we have seen in the previous videos. We are going to see what exactly are the configuration settings. When we talk about the target methods, we have selector, strict selector, fuzzy selector, and the image. We are going to see that as a developer, what are the different options I have when I have to work with strict, fuzzy, image, or the native text. Sometimes the live element is not available on the screen and we have to do the editing. That is what is referred as the offline editing. So today we are also going to discuss how actually the modern activities support the offline editing, and lastly we are going to see that how actually you can validate the descriptors. So this would be our complete agenda for today. At any point of time, if you want to jump to any specific sections, we have the timestamps in the description. You just have to click on the respective time and the video should navigate to that topic. Having said that, let's get started. Okay, so first thing first, whatever we are discussing today is applicable to the modern design experiences of UiPath, right? So your automation should be in the modern design. And how do you know whether it's modern or classic? If you are looking on the screen and you see app, web recorder, computer vision, all this in your UiPath studio and these activities, that means you are on the modern design, right? We already have discussed in details how do you switch between modern and the classic, how can you use the modern activities in classic and the classic in the modern. All of those videos are available for you in the description. This is a screenshot of the complete playlist which we have already covered, right? But the thing which we need to remember is that the first activity to work with the modern design is called the use application / browser, right? So if I have to do the modern design experiences, you have to make sure that you are using this activity which is called use application / browser. Okay. So this would be the starting point of any automation in the modern design, and we have also explored all the details of use application / browser also in video number 3 and video number 4. So please do watch the previous videos, that will give you a better understanding of this part. Okay. In the previous video, we have seen that how actually the selection screen help us to select and identify the element correctly on the screen. We have also seen that it generates something which is called a descriptor, which is nothing but a combination of target and anchor. Once we have used the selection screen, and we have discussed all of these properties in the previous video, right? So let's say you are done with the settings of the selection screen and you click on this button which is confirm here, then you get a different window which is a kind of a configuration setting window, and that has a lot of more settings as compared to the selection options. So as a developer, we should know that once the selection screen is confirmed, how and when to work on the next set of screen and what are the options which are available. So that is what we are going to explore in this video. Okay. The first topic is the configuration settings. Whenever you confirm any selection on the selection video, whenever you confirm any element with the help of the selection screen, you get a first option which is called the configuration. Now what are the options available here and how to utilize it, that we'll discuss later, but let first see in UiPath Studio where exactly this configuration setting is appearing. Okay, so now I am going back to my UiPath Studio. Okay, so I am in my UiPath Studio and you can see that I am in the modern design. Okay, so let's say we want to do something on this notepad. Let's say I simply want to click on this button, which is the file button. Okay, so the first thing first, I'll go to the activities and we have to use this one, which is called use application / browser. Drag and drop it here. Okay, minimize this. Okay, so I'll minimize this as well. Now indicate the application to automate. This is my notepad and I will point it to this application which we want to automate, right? Click to select the application. Okay, now as soon as you do that, you get a lot of settings, right? This button, this here, we have a lot of options here as well, right? All of this we have discussed in the first video, so please watch that to get the better context. Okay, now what do I want to do? I want to click, so I'll go to the activities and I'll use something which is called a click. Drag and drop the click activity. And guys, I'm using all the modern activities here. Okay, next we say that indicate in the notepad and I point it to this one which is called the file button. So the first screen which you see on this one, which is called the selection screen, and it has got this option: pause, hoverable element, image, text, computer vision, UI Explorer, CV. All of this we have discussed in the previous video. Once I indicate the element, let's say I want to indicate on the file. Okay, you would notice that you are getting a lot more settings than previous, right? In the classic experience, as soon as I point it, it directly go back to the UiPath Studio. The control is back to the UiPath Studio and we simply have the selector. But now here you have a lot of settings. And the first setting which we were talking about, I'll collapse everything here. Okay, so this is how you open and collapse everything, guys. Here like this, you can collapse everything. So you see here, in the selections option, this was the last video which we discussed. After that you have something which is called configuration, and this is what it is called, the configuration settings. In the configuration settings you have two options, or I would say three options: window selector and the target. If I talk about the first one, which is called the options, in the configuration settings you have this window which I was showing on the screen. Now what all these options do, right? Because I have this checkbox, I have this checkbox, I have a drop down here which has got some options. Should I select none, interactive, fully visible, right? So this is the option which I was talking in the presentation, right? So how do you get it? Once you select the element and before the confirmation you have this window which is called configuration, and this configuration has these options, right? Now let's go back to the presentation and see what actually these things do. Okay, so here we are back into the presentation and you can see that this is the same window which we get. Okay, now the first option is auto apply the changes. As the name suggests, any changes, whatever you do, whether you modify the selector, you modify the anchor or the target, do you want UiPath Studio to automatically save it? If the answer is yes, just tick on that checkbox which says auto apply the changes. The next option here is called the responsive websites. When selected, this enables the anchor to automatically move from left to the top of the target or from the top to left of the target, letting you automate the website that are responsive. Now what exactly is this responsive website? Okay, so if I open a web page and I open it on the full screen, right, and then I simply shrink the website, it may be because my window size is small or I am opening the website in a mobile device. So there are the website, the modern website, most of the modern websites are now responsive. Now the problem, or I would say the challenge with the responsive website is that they keep changing the position of the elements from left to top to right. But if there is some situation where the website is responsive, you no need to regenerate the selector. You simply say that, hey, I am dealing with something which is called responsive websites, and this control would automatically take care of the responsive websites. Okay, how does the responsive website look? Let's quickly go back and I'll show you how does the responsive website look. So I am on my Edge browser and I have uipath.com which is open, and this website is a responsive website. Now what do I mean by that? If you see here, we have this menu: platform, solution, resources and about. But if I open it in a small monitor, or if I open it in a shrink mode, what would happen? You would see that this menu automatically adjusting. If I just minimize it, see, it's responsive, right? When I was in this mode, you can see all these options, but as soon as I make it small, the website become responsive and all the top menu are now available here: platform, solution, resources and about, right? If I click on about, it's opening like this. If I click on platform, it's opening like this, and as soon as I maximize it, you will notice that they again become the top menu, right? So this is an example of responsive website. And if you are dealing with similar kind of website, so all you have to do is just come to the setting and specify that this is a responsive website. Interesting, right? There is a third option which says element visibility, right? As the name suggests, check whether the UI element is visible or not. Okay, you want to check whether the UI element is visible on the screen or not. Now it can have three options again. None simply means that do not check for visibility. Fully visible, the third one, means ensure that the UI element is visible on the screen, right? Because when you make the website responsive, when you shrink it, right, there are chances that the element is not visible or the element is fully visible. Now how do you want to automate? Do you want it to be fully visible and then only click, or you simply say that don't check for visibility and just do the operations? The other, or the third one, or I would say the middle one, is called interactive, and this is applicable only for the fuzzy selectors, guys. This is the default options. It checks whether the potential element is visible, ignoring the page scroll if it is, there is an additional pop-up on top of it, if somebody has scrolled the page, if the application is minimized, then also this property would be able to go and click and interact with the UI element, right? So if you have a button which you want to click on some dynamic website, it is minimized, there is an additional pop-up on top of it, or somebody has scrolled it to the bottom, all you have to do is just make sure that the element visibility is set to interactive for fuzzy selectors, and that's it, right? It should work. But sometime you might need a condition where you want to say that, hey, do not do the operation if the element is not visible. So then you say fully visible, and none means do not check for visibility, right? So these are the options which are available for you in the configuration settings. So I hope you understand all of this. If that is the case, just comment configuration settings, so I would understand that yes, you guys are following along. The next thing which you will see after the configuration option would be the Windows selector. Now what do you mean by the Windows selector? The Windows selector simply means the selector of the top window. Okay, the Windows selector can be expanded, you can view it, or you can edit it. Also you have an option to edit the UI Explorer. So when I say top window, guys, this is the top container, right? Remember from our discussion of classic experiences, right? We have a container at the top. Now whenever we are doing this attach browser or open browser in the classic experience, right, it used to automatically get the top window. Here also the same thing happened. The Windows selector by default take the parent, but as a developer you have an option to edit this in the Windows selector option, right? Let's quickly see that in action. Okay, so I am in my UiPath Studio, and this was the automation which we were writing, and we had a click activity and we wanted to click on this file button, right? So I say indicate on app, and I point it to this button, which is the file. Okay, now as soon as I click on the file button, we have already discussed these options. Just after that, you have something which is called the window selector. If I expand the window selector, you would notice that this is the notepad.exe, which is telling me that you are using a Windows application which is installed on your Windows. The name of the application is notepad.exe, the class is notepad, and the title is untitled notepad. Right now, sometime you might have a requirement this name is changing, right? So you have an option to come here and make it star. That's it, right? So you change it. Now how do you validate, how do you test it? You always can open this Windows selector in the UI Explorer. How do you open it? Just click on this one. See, open in UI Explorer. I click on it. So this is the window. You can again modify the selector. I put a star here, so this is replicated here. You can modify it. Once you are done, just click on this button which says save. And now you would notice that the window selector is having these options. Okay, one more thing guys which I want to show you here. Whenever you modify anything, you would see a small star here. This indicates that you have made some changes in the selector like this, or let's say you have put here, right? Anytime you do any modification in the selectors, you would see here something which is called a star mark. This means that you have made some changes, right? Now if I have clicked on this option which says auto apply the changes are auto applied. If you don't want that, just remove it, right? So I remove this. Now if I change it, see, now it's not getting saved, and I have to explicitly save and confirm it, right? But if I go here and I say auto apply the changes, okay, then you need to no need to worry. As soon as I collapse it, it automatically saves, right? So that's the difference on how do you apply the changes. One more thing, if you just simply want to save, you can use this button also. See, it's not automatically changing, it's not saving also, but if I click on apply, this will save, right? So now you have to explicitly click on apply. So now that again depends on an implementation. How do you want to pursue? Do you want to auto apply the changes, or you want to use this button which is the apply button here, and that will only appear when you do some modifications, right? So this guy is available for you, which is called the Windows selector, right? So we have seen two options guys in the configuration. One is the options and the other one is the Windows selector. At any point of time, if you want to save, just click on this confirm, and it should actually go and save the changes. Right now there are some targeting methods which I have changed, so I'll just stop it and I'll say cancel. Okay, so that was the window selector, which is the top level window which you can view, edit, and the best part, you can always use the UI Explorer to edit the selectors. Next in the configuration series, we have something which is called target, right? So guys, remember our discussion from the previous video. We have seen that whenever a modern activity is generating the selector, it automatically generates the strict selector, fuzzy selector, image, and the computer vision. Whereas in the classic, I have to automatically, I would say manually, I have to do all these strict, fuzzy, computer vision, I have to do exception handling and all, right? So this slides gives you a quick recap of what we have already discussed, right? Because this is the base for our upcoming context, right? So whenever you indicate any element on the screen, UiPath Studio automatically generates the strict, fuzzy, image, and the computer vision for you. All these methods are redundant to one another, which means that they are all trying to find the UI elements, and whichever method find it first, it gives you the element. Whereas in the classic, if you say that selector, it's only going to work with selector. If you want image, you have to write the automation, right? There is a concentric circle icon which is displayed that I'll show you, that demonstrate you that which method is the fastest and which is being used, right? So all these finding the race of finding the elements happen at the runtime, right? It is not recommended to manually edit the descriptors, right? Because if you edit the descriptor, which means that you are editing the target and you are editing the anchor also. But if you are facing some difficulties and you know what changes you are doing, you should always do the changes. But the recommended is the descriptors and the anchors work perfectly on most of the cases, right? But again, as I said, if you want to do the advanced feature and if you want to change the descriptor, you can enable, disable, edit the target methods, add more anchors, delete some of the anchors to get more hold of the UI element, right? So this is all generated by the modern selectors, right? Selector, fuzzy, image and computer vision. Now for all of this, the modern folder give you a lot of settings, and most of the settings you would see it's the same as the classic, right? Let's see the first one. The first one is the strict selector, right? This exactly is the same what we do in the classic, right? So in the classic we have seen that we indicate an element and it generate the selector. Same concept, selectors are the XML fragments which are generated by the UI element and that is used to uniquely identify the element, right? These are the concentric circle which I was talking about, okay? Now what you can do in the selector screen, right? You can actually use variables, same like in the classic. By right clicking on it, you can also create a new variable at the runtime, and you can again modify the selector with the help of UI Explorer, right? All the settings whichever you used to do in the classic are applicable to the modern as well, okay? Let's see that in action. Okay, so this is our automation. I say indicate in the notepad and I point it to this file button. Okay, now all these options are loaded. I hope now you understand what is this. So I just make it to auto apply changes. Windows selector looks fine for me. When we say about target, the first thing which I am getting is the strict selector, and you see these two circles, these are the concentric circle, which simply means that this was the first method to correctly find this element, right? There was fuzzy, there was image, but strict selector found this first. Now what as a developer you can do? As a developer you have an option to copy this to a clipboard. Okay, so if I click on this I button, you would notice that S indicates that this is identified by the selectors, right? Same if you select on this one, it will show that this is the element which is identified by the fuzzy. So as a developer you can always check where the element is being highlighted, right? This we have also discussed in the first video, but just a recap, right? You can edit the selector here. Okay, you can introduce a variable, right? So whenever we are trying to build a dynamic selectors and I have the data which is stored in some variable, I can always introduce that variable. How you can do it? Just select the value, the same concept we do it in the classic. Right click on that, use the variable, okay, and then you can select the correct variable and select the correct item, right? If you want to create a new variable, you can always select this and hit Ctrl+K. That is a shortcut again to create the new variable. If the variable is existing, it will show in this drop down. If the variable is not there, you can create a new variable and replace it, right? So let's say I want to create a variable called where, okay, and I say confirm. You would notice that this is automatically created by UiPath for me and it is replaced. Not only this, in the classic experience, right, whenever I used to introduce the variables, I had to actually go and do the manipulation. I have to test it with certain values, right? However, this thing says whenever I modified the selector, it says that the string menu item was found in the target fuzzy selector as well. It says that Mukesh, you have introduced a variable here instead of menu item. I was also using the same in fuzzy selector. Do you want to replace? If I say yes, it will replace this also. If I say no, if I say yes, it will replace this. If I say no, nothing will happen. This will be saved. But let's see, and I click on yes and see the same variable is now replicated here. So you might have an automation where you want to replace all the instances in the strict fuzzy. You don't have to do it again and again, right? Interesting feature, very good feature provided by the modern activities. Okay. Now one more thing here, if you click on this one, open in UI Explorer, this will again open this in the big UI Explorer where you can do a lot of selector manipulation, save it, and it will reflect back, right? So all these options are available for you guys in the strict selector. Okay, so we have discussed this. So we can create a variable, concentric circle we have discussed, we can create a new variable, and we can also manipulate all the existing element at once, right? Whenever you do any of this variable configuration, right, we have seen that you can create variable, but apart from variable, you can use arguments. If you want to select the existing variable, you can use this drop down and select the variable. The shortcut is Control plus space. If you want to select an argument, you say Control Shift space. Control plus K will create a new variable, Control plus M will create a new argument, right? And whenever you do any of this, you have this button here which says override the default value, right? So this is the default value which is called the menu button, which I was showing, right? Menu button is the default value. Now if let's say someday the variable value is coming as let's say super menu, now do you want to change this or you do not want to change this, right? That entirely depends on your automation, but you have this option that how do you want to take care of the default value. Okay, now sometime as a developer, right, which is again not a best practice to have the same name as a variable and argument, but let's say by mistake you created a variable and an argument with the same name and both of them you are using here. Now what would happen? So this is important. If both variable and argument are of the same name, the variable is always defaulted and used at the runtime. Arguments with the name identical to the variables are hidden from the variable section in the selection menu, right? So when you are selecting the variable here, any argument which is having the same name as the variable, that won't be shown for you in the selection, right? But you should not land in this situation, because whenever we talk about the best practices, right, RPA UiPath has a lot of best practices which as a developer we should follow, and one of the best practice which we had discussed in the best practice series was the naming, right? So name the variables and arguments differently, right? In the arguments it is advisable to use in, out and IO, right? In case you are not aware of the best practices, guys, I have a dedicated playlist, small videos, 30-second video, 60-second video to guide you on the best practices, right? I'll put those links also in the description, but in case you forgot the best practice, if you have the duplicate name, please read this important disclaimer which is available on the screen. Okay, this is the same option which I have shown you, that when you have the variables and the arguments which are using the same value, modern selectors automatically is able to identify that Mukesh, you are identifying one thing, do you want to replace it for the others, or you only want to stick it with the one, right? If you say yes, and we have seen that it was able to replace all the instances, right? Very good and very interesting settings, right? Last thing, you all understand what is wildcard, right? We have question mark and we have star. Selectors also support the wildcards. You can simply put star, question mark. All of your experiences which are coming from classic is applicable to the modern as well. Next, in the selection screen, after the selector, UiPath Modern also generates something which is called fuzzy selectors, right? Now let us see what are the settings which are applicable for us as a developer in the fuzzy selectors, right? So this is how this would look, right? The fuzzy selector is similar to the strict selector, with a difference that it would have that fuzzy attribute which is added, right? In the first video we have discussed how do you differentiate between fuzzy and the strict selectors, right? Now the fuzzy selector works on the concept of matching accuracy, which means that how close is the element, is it 50% close, 40% close, 60% close. That's why it is called fuzzy selectors, and that thing is called the accuracy. So whenever we talk about the fuzzy selector, there is a parameter which is called accuracy. The default value of that accuracy is 0.5, but as a developer you have an option. You can always change that accuracy setting. If you see here, whenever we talk about fuzzy, you will have the selector. You can always introduce the wildcard. Everything, all the options are applicable here to you, same as the selector, with an additional setting which is called the accuracy. The accuracy is nothing but a slider. Default value is 0.5. okay. The matching accuracy can be set between 0.4 to 1, where a lower value indicates a higher level of fuzziness, meaning it is the selector output and more elements, whereas the higher value indicates a lower degree of fuzziness, right? So if I make it to 1, it means that I am looking for exact 100% match. Okay, let's see that in action where exactly this is applicable. Okay, so I'll say indicate on the app. I'll point it to this file button. Okay, so we talk about these options. We talk about the window selector, top level window. We talk about the selector, which is the strict selector, right? Concentric circle, this means that this is using the strict selector, right? And this has also generated the fuzzy selector for me. As you can see here, this is the selector for the fuzzy. I have the same options. I can show all the message. I can copy the selector, but I have this gentleman here which is called the accuracy, which determines that how accurate you want to have. If I make it to 1, that means I want to make it 100% accurate, right? If I minimize it, you have the lowest value at 0.4, the default value is 0.5, 1 means 100% match. This is the default value. Okay, again you can change it, do the manipulation, everything can be done here. Okay, now one more thing, right? If you see here, there are these checkboxes which are applicable. At any point of time, if I want that, okay, I have no more confidence in the fuzzy selector, or I want only the fuzzy selector to work, you can uncheck this, you can check this or uncheck this. That is how easy it is, right? So I have unchecked the strict, unchecked the fuzzy selector. So this concentric circle is moved here. I say that I do not want to do the strict selector, I only want to do fuzzy selector, so concentric circle shifts, right? Very handy, very powerful feature just on your fingertips, right? All you have to do is you should know that what all these options are and how to use it, right? These selectors options are exactly the same. You can edit it, modify it here, put the variables. You can introduce the variable, same like this, right? Everything is same, but with an additional setting of accuracy. Okay, so this we have seen that the fuzzy selector can also use the wildcard, star, asterisk, everything whatever you have in the strict is applicable to the fuzzy as well, right? Along with the accuracy, you would also see an option which is called text is, and which has this option which is called file. Now in this drop down you would have two options, which is text is, inner text is, full text is, and then you have something which is called ignore text. Now if you see here, when the fuzzy selector was finding that file button, it mentioned that fuzzy with the level of 0.5 is trying to look for the file button. It says that text is fuzzy. You can change it to something like inner text is fuzzy, full text is fuzzy, right? Full text, native text, remember the output methods, all those are applicable to here as well. If you do not want the fuzzy to work on the text, just simply say ignore the text, right? Let's see this thing also in the fuzzy selector. So I'll say indicate on screen. I'll point it to this file button. Okay, and we are talking about the fuzzy. We have this accuracy, we can modify the selector, but I have this button here which says that the text is file. I do not want this file, so I say that ignore the text. That's it. Text is file, right? If I do not want it, ignore the text and just say confirm, and that should work, right? Depending on the type of text scraping which was used to extract that, you will have either this option, you can have this, or you can have this option, right? So this setting is also applicable to the fuzzy selectors. Selector is done, fuzzy selector is done. The next option which you have is called the image automation, right? So as we see in the classic selector, as a developer we have to do the exception handling and we have to look for image and all, right? We are using the modern, so all of this is done by UiPath Studio for us, right? So UiPath Studio automatically generates the image automation for us. You can see the screenshot directly. You no need to grab your mouse and do the screenshot, right? Same like the classic, we also have an accuracy slider here. The default value for the image is set to 0.8, right? And the accuracy again can be set between 0.4 to 1, right? Where 1 being exact 1-to-1 match, right? If you only want to do the image related automation, you can use the F3 button and you can draw a box, right? So it's not like that once the image is created by UiPath, you cannot edit it. You always can edit it. You can uncheck everything and you can say that I only want to do the image automation. That always is applicable. Okay, so let's see the image automation and the settings in UiPath Studio. Okay, so this was our notepad. I wanted to indicate on the screen, and let's say I want to point on the file button. Okay, so we have got the target, we have got the selector, we have got the fuzzy selector, text is accuracy, and I have got the image. Now this is the image, this is a photograph which the UiPath has created. If I want to regenerate this image, right, I don't have any option here. I only have one option, which is called this one, to show me where exactly this is matching, and I indicates that this is using the image automation, right? Now if I want to change it, remember in the first video I show you this one, which is called the image recognition. The shortcut is F3. You can click on this and you can regenerate the image, right? So let's say I am not comfortable with whatever image I have got. I can click on this button and generate the new image, something like this. Okay, now definitely I have changed it because this was a new, but it will change it, right? And you can see that it says that Mukesh, you have modified the complete thing, right? Do you want to save it or do you want to not save it, right? I can click on this refresh and it will again refresh the same, right? So image automation is also available for you with the settings of this, right? How accurate you want the image to be, where 1 means exact 100% match, right? The default value is again 0.8 here. Coming back to the automation, you can use the refresh button to manually refresh the image that you have selected in case the image of the element is changed while it was being indicated, right? So this was the refresh button. When you click on this I button, this is applicable to all of them. This will show which UI element or which target method was able to identify the UI element, right? Now there is a note which is mentioned on the image automation. It's that if the targeting method is disabled in the project settings, right? So let's say in the targeting methods in the project setting, you have an option to disable the image, right? So let's say you have disabled this in the project setting, you need to re-enable and you need to make sure that the element is valid, right? So just in case you are not getting this image options enabled, you might have disabled that in the project settings, and that you can always do by going to the project settings and re-enabling it, right? So image gives you all these options. While doing this, you also have something which is called the native text, right? As the name suggests, native text, you have a checkbox, you can enable or you can disable the native text. This method enable use to use all the label text to identify the elements which you want to interact with, right? So it's like just finding the text. Do you want to find the element only with text and you do not want the selectors, you do not want the fuzzy, you do not want the image? You can always use something which is called the native text. The native text is going to extract all the text and it is going to tell you that, hey, this is the text which I am looking for, right? When you talk about the text, because this is a text selection, so it is important that the case become important, right? You might have a user interface where you have two buttons, one is file in small, the other one is file in capital. You have duplicate file button, right? So you want to use it when you are pretty much sure that I want to use the text, and when you use text, case become very important. And in the modern, you have that option to toggle that case sensitivity on or off depending on your requirement, right? So you don't have to write automation code, regex, string manipulation, any of that, right? All of that is available for just a matter of click, right? So the native text is also available for you in the target, right? But just to remind you, this option will only appear if you say enable native text checkbox when indicating the element, then only this method would be eligible for you, okay, or I would say applicable to you, right? But remember, whenever you are using this, just make sure of the case sensitivity, okay? Moving forward, sometime what happens, we have indicated an element and the element is no longer available on the screen. Then what happens? We are not able to modify the selectors. UiPath Studio, the modern activity precisely, gives you an option to do the editing offline, which simply means that if the application is not running or somebody has closed it or you are on a different environment, you can use this option. You can do a retry, you can use the edit offline, or you can do the cancel, right? So if I select on cancel, this will cancel. If I say retry, it will again try to research that window. But if I say edit offline, it will open it in that offline editing mode. But when we are using the offline editing, right, UiPath is not able to find the elements. So that means that I would not be able to validate, I would not be able to do the anchors or any other functionality that requires the live application, right? But it's not like that you cannot do then offline editing. What exactly that thing means and how you can modify and save it, I'll show you in action in UiPath Studio. So let's say this is our notepad, right? So I say indicate on screen and I point it to this button, which is file, okay, and I say confirm. Okay, now this file selector, everything is available, and you can see that notepad is also here. If I go here and I say edit the target, right, I am getting this complete window for me to do the edit and everything, right? I can do the changes, strict, modern, all the settings, whichever I wanted to do, I'll do, and I'll say confirm, right? Let's take a second scenario, right? I'll close this notepad. Application is not available. If I go here and I say edit the target, the same pop-up will appear where it says that the target application could not be found. It says that, hey, you want to edit the selector, but the notepad is not open. I can say cancel. It will cancel out. I'll say retry. It says that I'm not still able to find. The third option is edit offline. When I say edit offline, I am not getting the options which I was getting previously, right? Because this activity does not know what would be the anchor, what would be the target. But you always has an option to modify this. The only thing that would happen is you won't be able to validate whether your modifications are working or not, right? That's why you don't have this UI Explorer here as well, right? So this would be used in scenarios where you are not able to open the application or you don't have the access to the application, right? You can always do the offline editing. The only thing would be, since you don't have the application, you don't have the privilege to validate, right? But you can do all this modification, click on the save button and it will directly save, right? So this option is called the offline editing feature of this modern design. Lastly, we have something which is called the validating the descriptors. Okay, same like you validate the selector, right? You have highlight, indicate that it is not proper and anything, right? When we talk about the modern, we are talking about the descriptors, right? So the validation process ensure that the combination is working properly. You can validate your selection by just using the validate button. Once you do the validation button, if all the target and the anchor pairs are identified correctly, the final anchor would be highlighted. You will also see which method was able to find the element, whether it was image, whether it was that, whether it was the other one, right? These are the symbols which you are going to see, right? This concentric symbol shows that the targeting method was the fastest. This indicate this method failed to identify any element. This method will tell you that, hey, I found duplicates. If you see this this will found a duplicate and the correct identified was element alongside with the target element, right? So at any point of time in the any targeting method, you would can see all of these different option, right? This tick indicates that worked perfectly, but it was not the fastest. This says that okay, I was the fastest to find the element. Method failed. You can read this is a self-explanatory, right? Let me quickly show it to you in the descriptor so that you remember where exactly these settings are available, right? So I'll just open the notepad again, right? So this is the notepad again. If I go here and now if I say edit, now this is an online editing, right? Offline editing is gone. Okay, now here the notepad is alive. You can see the first option here which says that strict selector was able to identify this, right? If I just go here and I say that, if I go here and say that in the fuzzy selector just look for files, okay, and I say validate, see, you see this red cross, right? Because I am saying it to find file. So it says that Mukesh, this is the fastest, this is not able to work because you have made some manipulation and this is breaking, right? Let's say I go to the selector and I change the selector something to menu bar 1 mistakenly, or anyways I say validate, right? It says that your selectors are not working, your this thing is not working. We are able to identify this only with the help of computer vision. Image was also able to identify this as a target, but this is not the fastest, right? This was able to identify, but this is not the fastest. This is the first one, right? These two got failed, so you see this red marks, and all of this is happening only by clicking on this button which is called validate, right? So these symbols appear for you whenever you do any manipulation in these things. Okay, you can change this accuracy and then this, all of this would update in the runtime. Okay, today we have not discussed about the computer vision, right guys? Computer vision is a separate topic, but always you can enable or disable it by just clicking on this guy at the top which looks like a computer vision. The shortcut is F8. At any point of time, if you don't want the computer vision, disable it. Want it, enable it, right? Uncheck it. All of that is available, just a matter of click. In case you don't understand what is computer vision, we have a dedicated playlist guide where we have explained the computer vision. Please watch that playlist. But to relate with modern folders, computer vision is also generated by the modern folder for us, right? So this is how you validate the descriptors. Okay, so this is all the options which we see in validating the descriptors, and all of these buttons you would see whenever you are working, right? So just keep a note of all of this, that which symbol indicates what. And the best part, you can always hover your mouse on that and it will tell you what that thing actually does, right? So that was the last topic for today which we wanted to discuss, that how do you actually validate the descriptors. Okay, so let's quickly summarize, right? So we are looking at the UI automation, which refers to process of automating the user interfaces. The first activity we should use is the use application/browser. We have something which is called a selection screen. It has got a lot of controls which we can use as per our requirement. Configuration setting is there which makes sure how the element changes has to be perceived, whether you want to save the changes, you want to manually save, auto apply on the changes. The top level settings are controlled with the help of something which is called Windows Selector. We have seen that we can edit, add the wildcard, introduce the variable in the selectors as well as in the fuzzy selector. The fuzzy selector gives you some more controls as compared to the selectors. We have something which is called accuracy slider, which is available to adjust the things in the image automation. We have also seen an important concept which is called the offline editing. That's also possible and very easy available in the modern design. And lastly, we have seen that whenever you modify or edit some of the descriptors, there are some icons which are shown, and as a developer we should be aware of which icon meant what. And in case you forgot, just keep your mouse hover on that icon and it should tell you what that actually means, right? Okay, so with this I would like to wrap this video here. Thank you for watching. I hope you found this video insightful. If you have any more question, any more doubts, any suggestions on how we can improve, let me know in the comments, right? I would be happy to receive your feedback. In case you like this video, please do subscribe to the channel, and happy automation.